Welcome to Hopeful Moments 1. Have you ever encountered people who believe they are entitled to everything without putting in any effort? Those who think the world owes them, that they deserve the best without having to make any sacrifices. They demand, manipulate, and even trample on others to get what they want without the slightest sense of guilt. But life doesn't always go their way. Today, we're diving into a dramatic and satisfying story, a hard-hitting lesson for those who believe that greed and selfishness can get them everything. A man who always thought he deserved respect and privileges, regardless of how he treated others. He exploited, manipulated, and assumed no one would dare to stand up to him. But this time, he picked the wrong person. Someone who was ready to fight back, turn the tables, and make this entitled individual face consequences he never saw coming. Get ready for an epic reverse card. Don't look away, because karma is about to strike right now. Story 1. On an afternoon in 2004, a retail worker witnessed a scene that was both frustrating and alarming, causing a stir throughout the store. A woman walked in with her 3 small children. At first glance, she seemed like just another busy mother taking her kids shopping. But soon, everyone realized her true intentions. Instead of keeping an eye on her children or taking them along as she shopped, the woman led all 3 kids to the TV display section, where bright screens were playing colorful cartoons. She quickly seated them as if it were a free babysitting service and walked away without even glancing back. The children, too young to realize they had been left unattended, initially sat still, watching TV. But before long, they started running around, playing, and causing chaos in the display area. They pressed random buttons on the TVs, grabbed every remote they could find, and even climbed onto the shelves, worrying the staff. The loud noises and running footsteps soon caught the attention of store employees. One of them, after witnessing the growing mess, decided to find the irresponsible mother and ask her to supervise her kids. When they found her casually browsing the aisles, the staff member politely reminded her that the store was not a daycare and that leaving her children unsupervised could be dangerous. Instead of feeling embarrassed or apologizing, the woman instantly became furious. She glared at the employee as if she couldn't believe she had just been called out. Her tone quickly turned hostile as she started yelling, accusing the worker of being outrageous for interfering with her business. Customers nearby started paying attention to the commotion, but that did not stop her from escalating the situation. In a fit of anger, she grabbed a soda can from a nearby shelf and threw it onto the floor, causing it to burst open and spill everywhere. Sticky liquid splattered across the aisle, creating a mess. Some employees stepped back in shock, while others rushed to get cleaning supplies. But she wasn't done yet. Grabbing her 3 children, she loudly declared that she would have every single store employee fired for daring to speak up against her. Onlookers were stunned by her blatant entitlement, but no one believed her threats would actually come true. Finally, she stormed out of the store, dragging her kids behind her, leaving behind a sticky mess on the floor and the disapproving stares of employees and customers alike. As the glass doors closed behind them, the store quickly returned to normal. The workers continued their jobs, customers resumed their shopping, and, just as expected, no one lost their job over her ridiculous threats. Perhaps after this incident, she would search for another place to drop off her kids for free, while retail employees gained yet another bizarre story to share during their lunch breaks. Lessons to take away from this story. 1. Parenting is a responsibility, not an option. Having children is not just a right, it's a tremendous responsibility. Parents are obligated to care for, protect, and supervise their kids, not abandon them for their own convenience. In this story, the mother irresponsibly left her children to roam freely in the store, treating the TV section as a free daycare. This behavior was not just inconsiderate but also dangerous for the children themselves. 2. Wrong actions cannot be justified by anger. Instead of admitting her mistake and correcting her behavior, the mother in the story reacted with anger and defiance. Not only did she refuse to take responsibility, but she also caused damage by throwing a soda can and threatening the employees. This highlights a common reality: some people use anger to intimidate others, but that does not make them right. 3. Retail workers deserve respect. Retail employees deal with all kinds of customers daily, from polite shoppers to rude and entitled individuals. Despite this, they strive to maintain professionalism and create a pleasant shopping experience for everyone. This story is a reminder that we should respect those in service industries rather than treat them as people who must tolerate selfish behavior. 4. Empty threats don't change reality. The woman in the story claimed she would get every employee fired, but in the end, nothing happened. This proves that baseless threats are often just a reflection of the speaker's frustration rather than any real power. In life, yelling louder or making empty claims won't alter the truth or force others to comply. 5. Personal responsibility creates a better society. A civilized society depends not only on laws but also on each person's sense of responsibility. If everyone behaved as irresponsibly and thoughtlessly as the woman in this story, society would descend into chaos. On the other hand, when people take responsibility for their actions and show respect for others, the world becomes a much better place. Remember, entitlement and selfishness may seem like shortcuts to getting what you want, but they often backfire. True respect and fulfillment come from treating others with kindness, accountability, and integrity. Story 2. The story of the pregnant teacher not only highlights the challenges that pregnant women face in the workplace but also serves as proof of the indifference and lack of empathy some people have toward others. From the early days of her pregnancy, this teacher suffered from severe nausea, a common symptom that is sometimes dismissed. Instead of receiving understanding and support from her colleagues, she was treated unfairly and even became a target of bullying. Some mocked her discomfort, perhaps thinking she was exaggerating. Others showed impatience, seeing her condition as an inconvenience rather than a health issue that needed attention. When she needed to rest or step out of the room to feel better, not only did they ignore her, but they also showed cold attitudes, even making things more difficult for her. Everything came to a head during an important meeting. Feeling that her body could no longer endure, the teacher repeatedly asked to leave to avoid an unfortunate incident. However, a colleague, possibly the ringleader of the bullying, deliberately blocked her way, preventing her from going outside. This action was not only cruel but also showed a complete disregard for her health and emotions. At that moment, the teacher could no longer hold back. Right in front of all her colleagues, she vomited directly into a trash bin. But what shocked everyone the most was that she vomited blood, a clear sign that her health had been severely affected. That moment completely changed the atmosphere in the meeting room. The laughter and mockery instantly stopped, and those who had belittled and ridiculed her fell silent. Faced with undeniable evidence of her alarming health condition, they finally realized the gravity of the situation. Guilt, shame, or at the very least, embarrassment was evident on the faces of those who had mistreated her. After the incident, everyone's attitude changed completely. The very people who had bullied her now showed concern, even going out of their way to help her at work as if trying to make amends. Perhaps they had finally realized how cruel and heartless their previous behavior had been. However, for the teacher, this belated remorse could never make up for the emotional suffering she had endured for so long. The fact that she had to vomit blood just to be treated with respect was a sad reflection of the severe lack of empathy in her workplace. Lessons from the story. This story serves as a wake-up call about how people treat each other in the workplace. It emphasizes that we should never belittle or mock the struggles others are going through. Pregnant women, in particular, who experience significant physical and emotional changes, deserve understanding and support, not coldness and alienation. Moreover, the story highlights how people sometimes only start to care when the consequences become undeniable. Instead of waiting for things to escalate, we should learn to listen, observe, and empathize with others from the beginning. A word of encouragement, a small act of kindness, or even just basic respect can make a huge difference in someone's life. Story 3. This teacher had a particular habit, frequently checking his pockets whenever he felt anxious or uncomfortable. This might have been a coping mechanism that helped him feel more secure in unfamiliar environments or stressful situations. However, for those unfamiliar with autism, this behavior could easily be misinterpreted, especially in a store where employees are trained to detect suspicious activity related to shoplifting. On that day, when the teacher entered the store to buy a few items, his unconscious habit immediately caught the attention of the cashier. She started watching him closely, not because of any clear sign of theft but simply because he seemed nervous and kept checking his pockets. Instead of considering different possibilities, the cashier hastily concluded that he was acting suspiciously and decided to monitor him closely. The tension escalated when the cashier directly accused the teacher of taking items without paying. The sudden accusation left him completely panicked. He knew he had done nothing wrong, but he struggled to express his innocence in a way that others could understand and believe. His anxiety made him appear even more suspicious in the eyes of those around him. Instead of handling the situation calmly or listening to his explanation, the cashier loudly called for the manager and demanded an immediate bag check. When the teacher refused, feeling insulted, a completely normal reaction, the situation quickly spiraled out of control. Other employees began surrounding him, creating an atmosphere of pressure and hostility. Customers in the store, instead of investigating the situation, simply watched with judgmental eyes, as if they had already decided he was guilty. Things took a turn for the worse when security arrived. Rather than de-escalating the situation, the security guard immediately resorted to physical restraint, grabbing the teacher's arm and demanding that he stay put for a search. However, due to his autism, the teacher had a strong reaction to being touched without consent. He instinctively pulled his arm away, but this was misunderstood as resistance. Without hesitation, the guard used force to subdue him, pushing him to the ground, making the situation even more distressing. Amid the chaos, the police were called. When an officer entered the store, the teacher recognized him. It could have been a former student of his or someone he had worked with before. Thanks to this connection, the officer immediately realized the mistake and called for everyone to remain calm. When they checked the security cameras, the truth was finally revealed: the teacher was completely innocent. There was no footage of him stealing anything, and his habit of checking his pockets was simply a coping mechanism rooted in his anxiety. This left those who had quickly accused him, the cashier, the manager, and the security guard, visibly embarrassed. However, the most disappointing part was that even after the truth came to light, the cashier, the one who started the whole ordeal, showed no remorse. She remained cold and unapologetic, despite the fact that her ignorance and bias had caused an unnecessary and deeply traumatic situation for the teacher. In the end, the police officer decided to detain her for investigation regarding false accusations and possibly even provoked assault. Although the teacher was proven innocent, he left the store with a bitter feeling. It wasn't just the fear of being wrongfully accused, but also the disappointment of realizing how quickly some people jump to conclusions without evidence, relying solely on personal bias. Just because he acted differently from the norm, he was suspected, surrounded, forcibly restrained, and treated like a criminal. Lessons from the story. Bias can lead to serious mistakes. The cashier immediately associated the teacher's anxious behavior with theft, without any concrete evidence. This led to an unnecessary chain of events that caused severe emotional distress. A lack of understanding about autism can have harmful consequences. If the store employees had understood that behaviors like checking pockets don't necessarily indicate shoplifting, they could have handled the situation more humanely instead of rushing to accuse him. People should verify before judging. Instead of blindly believing a single accusation, the employees and customers should have taken the time to understand the situation before forming conclusions. An apology can be difficult, but it is necessary. Even after being proven wrong, the cashier refused to apologize. This made the whole experience even more painful and raised questions about personal integrity and accountability. This story is a reminder that society needs to be more understanding toward those who are different. If people took just a little more time to pause, observe, and think before making judgments, situations like this would never happen. Story 4: The Price of Selfishness. Sarah had an incredibly difficult pregnancy. Severe nausea left her utterly exhausted, not to mention the constant fatigue and a series of other health issues. Her body was changing rapidly, the psychological pressure was mounting, and all she wanted was support from her partner. At first, Paul seemed caring, but his patience quickly wore thin. As Sarah's need for care increased, instead of showing understanding, he became indifferent and irritated. The words of encouragement faded, replaced by cold stares whenever she complained about her pain or exhaustion. Worse yet, Paul started mocking her, claiming she was overreacting to everything. This attitude didn't just show a lack of respect, it revealed Paul's selfish nature. He only wanted to enjoy the good parts of a relationship without sharing in the struggles. For a pregnant woman, especially one going through such a difficult time, this kind of neglect felt like emotional betrayal. The cracks in their relationship became more apparent, particularly when they argued over naming their soon-to-be-born son. Sarah had a name she loved and wanted for their child, but Paul insisted on naming him Valentino, a name Sarah absolutely despised. This wasn't just a disagreement over a name, it was a deeper issue. Paul showed no regard for Sarah's wishes. He didn't see her as an equal partner but rather as someone whose opinions could be dismissed. His stubborn insistence on a name she hated was a clear sign of control, an indication that he wanted to dominate every aspect of their lives. After giving birth, Sarah was still recovering and under the effects of pain medication. This was when she was at her weakest and most vulnerable. Instead of protecting her, Paul took advantage of the situation in an unforgivable way. He secretly filled out the birth certificate and forged her signature, officially naming their son Valentino without telling her. When Sarah discovered the truth, her world shattered. It wasn't just about the name, it was the realization that Paul had absolutely no respect for her. This was the final straw. If he could manipulate such an important decision so blatantly, how much worse would things get in the future? The decision to leave wasn't easy, especially just after giving birth. But Sarah knew that staying with someone like Paul would only bring more suffering for her and her son. She found the strength to walk away, fight for custody, and start a new journey, one where she was no longer controlled by Paul's selfishness. Time passed. Sarah moved on with her life, and Paul quickly remarried another woman. Perhaps he believed he had completely escaped his past and could start fresh without ever thinking about Sarah again. But fate has its own way of teaching lessons. One day, Paul's new wife went to a hair salon for a haircut and styling. Unbeknownst to her, the hairstylist was none other than Sarah's sister. During their conversation, the new wife mentioned she was struggling to pick a name for her soon-to-be-born daughter. This was an opportunity Sarah's sister couldn't resist. With a mischievous smile, she casually suggested, "Why don't you name her Sarah? It's a beautiful and meaningful name." Without a second thought, Paul's new wife loved the idea and decided to name their daughter Sarah, completely unaware of the strange coincidence. And so, Paul, the man who had stolen the right to name Sarah's child, was now forced to call his daughter by the very name of the woman he had betrayed. A lesson for the selfish. When Paul realized the truth, he must have been shocked, maybe even regretful. But the irony was, this time, there was nothing he could do. Fate had set things in motion, ensuring he would always be reminded of his past mistakes, a bitter lesson for those who try to control everything, only to be taught an unforgettable lesson by life itself. Paul's story isn't unique. The world is full of people like him, those who believe they have the right to control everything, that others must live according to their wishes. They demand but never give. They see themselves as the center of the universe. And when things don't go their way, they blame everyone else instead of reflecting on their own faults. But in the end, such people often face consequences brought upon them by their own actions. It may not happen immediately, but sooner or later, life will force them to confront the reality of their choices. Those who manipulate, exploit, or abuse their power will one day realize that they can't control everything forever. The lesson here isn't just about karma or justice, it's about kindness and empathy. The world is already tough enough, and the way we treat others defines who we are. Do we want to be remembered as someone worthy of respect, or as someone whose name only brings memories of pain? Remember, having rights does not mean having the privilege to trample over others. Selfishness always comes at a cost. When we treat others with kindness, we don't just make the world better, we create positive opportunities for ourselves. In the end, true winners in life aren't those who manipulate or control, but those who live with sincerity and integrity. All these stories share a common theme: selfishness, lack of understanding, and the desire for control can destroy relationships of all kinds, whether in love, family, work, or even everyday social interactions. Dismissing others' feelings, rushing to judge, or imposing authority will always lead to serious consequences. Yet, life is a way of teaching such people a lesson. Sometimes, punishment doesn't come immediately, but eventually, fate ensures they face the consequences of their actions. Those who act unfairly, manipulate, or abuse power will soon learn that no one can control everything forever. Ultimately, the true lesson is not just about fairness or karma, it's about human decency and empathy. In a world already full of hardships, the way we treat others determines how we will be remembered. Will we be cherished and respected, or merely forgotten as someone who hurt others along the way?